Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers, over the last couple of weeks we've been discussing the many prophets. Last time we discussed Shith alayhi salam and how Shaitan really began to immerse himself with the people of Qabil. Then he went over to the people of Shith alayhi salam, brought them forward, and so adultery, music, fornication, festivities, festivals, they began to occur. My dear brothers, very interestingly however, it should be noted, and it must be noted, that shirk up to this point was not existing. Everyone was on Tawheed. Everyone believed, La ilaha illallah. However, these little tentacles of shaitan began to spread. Slowly, they began to go away from the teachings of Allah. However, they still knew that there was only one Rabb, and His name was Allah. As the years elapsed, generations elapsed, some say, in a Sahih narration actually, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned to have said either 10 generations or 10 centuries elapsed, and then came Idris alayhi salam. Idris alayhi salam was born in a Rawayat Israeli, and remember Rawayat Israeli, we discussed them in the first couple of stories, first couple of videos, so if you wish to refer back to them, please do so to understand what Rawaya we can take in accordance to Islam and which Rawaya we reject. Some, if not all tafsir, have a little bit of Rawayat Israeli amongst them to help elongate and elaborate upon the Quranic ayahs. It mentions that Idris alayhi salam was a tall, well-built man with a very nice, thick beard, nice complexion, and he was often quiet. He often spent his time in contemplation. Idris alayhi salam actually is known as the individual who first began to put things on paper. He was the first individual who organized people to do jihad against the people who were committing fornication, who were so mesmerized by shaitan and his activities that he began to attack the very tenets of the Sharia of before Shith alayhi salam and now Idris alayhi salam. And so he organized them and he fought them. Then what had happened is he lived for some say 850 years, but a number of hundreds of years as the people at that time used to live. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually said that all of the good deeds that people do, they accumulate for Idris alayhi salam. So any of his followers, if they do good, they get the reward, but so does Idris alayhi salam. And very interesting here, and Idris alayhi salam is mentioned twice in the Quran, by the way. He has a very good friend amongst the angels, and he said to his angels, I wish to see the heavens today. I wish to see the skies today. And actually before this fact, he says, can you speak to Allah and speak to Him to elongate my life a little bit? Not that he was scared of death or he didn't want to die, but he wanted to obtain more ajr, because the more people did, the more his ajr increased. And so Idris alayhi salam, he asked the angel one day, let's go to show me the sky, show me the heavens. And so he goes and he takes him on the skies of Allah, first sky, second sky, third sky, fourth sky. At the fourth sky of Allah, very interestingly, the angel of death is waiting. And the angel of death says, I was very shocked and surprised that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me to wait here. Idris alayhi salam is coming and you will take his soul on the fourth sky of Allah. And I was wondering, how will Idris alayhi salam, who is upon the earth, manage to reach the fourth sky of Allah? Subhanallah, mashallah, this is the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He reaches the fourth sky of Allah, his soul is taken, and during the Mi'raj of Rasulullah actually visited Idris alayhi salam at the fourth sky of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what happens after this, my dear brothers, is very interesting, because as the years elapse now after Idris alayhi salam, many generations elapse, and Quran actually makes mention of this. There were 5 righteous people in Surah Nuh. These 5 righteous people came either at the time of Idris alayhi salam or immediately after Idris alayhi salam. Their names were Waddan, Suwa'an, Yaghuth, Ya'uq, and Nasr. Shaitan now comes back to these people. Remember, adultery, fornication again has been stemmed, but now it again begins to make a rise as the generations elapse. Shaitan is a very patient individual. He has time until the day of judgment. He knows that if I go and do a full frontal attack, people will know it's the wrong message. And so he won't ever attack that way. He will go and he will beguile you in other ways. So Shaitan, he begins to say, well, these are your great 5 pious people. If you don't know them, if you don't recognize them, if you don't draw symbols of them, if you don't make statues of them, the people after you will forget. The people began to discuss with one another, he's certainly spoken the truth, let's make statues. And so small statues were made. And then Shaitan goes back to them. Shaitan says to them, well, you've made these statues, but if you don't visit them on a daily basis, people will forget. Come visit them. Let's make a day to celebrate. For example, Yahuth and Ya'uk and Nasr and Sawa'an. And so he's made these, and slowly he began to change their names little by little. Another generation passes. As the generations passes, they say, well, shouldn't you bow your head in respect? And so people began to bow their head in respect. Another generation passes, and then Shaitan comes back and says, well, you're bowing, but shouldn't you ask them? These guys can provide. Ask them for more. And so they began to look at these statues by the work of Shaitan over hundreds of years. They began to look at these people as, this statue will provide me with rain, this statue will provide me with this statue will provide me with this statue will provide me with this. And finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Nuh alayhi salam, and inshallah in the coming days we'll be discussing the story, very interesting story of Nuh alayhi salam. Remember, there are 5 prophets who have been called the pinnacle of the prophets. The one at the top is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Then you get Ibrahim, Isa, Musa, and finally Nuh alayhi salam. Very interesting prophet, very special prophet, and he was sent as the first prophet sent to all of humanity after Adam alayhi salam. So inshallah we'll be discussing him in our next video. I hope and I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we understand the attacks of shaitan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the beguiling and the trickery of shaitan.